The Memphis Grizzlies are pretty much exactly where I expected them to be at this point in time in the season. Right in the middle of things in the Western Conference, not dominating, but not out of the playoff picture, sitting in 6th at 9-8, only 2 games back at the 3 seed, but only a game in front of the 10 seed. Right in the mix, playing well, but not anywhere near the way that we would have expected. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Memphis Grizzlies start to the year and why their success has been completely unlike their success of the past for a Memphis Grizzlies team in the last decade, and why it has been so surprising. As mentioned, the Memphis Grizzlies are 9-8, sitting at 6th in the Western Conference. But here is why the Memphis Grizzlies are surprisingly where they are at based on their way of play, and what has made their season and their play this season so different from the pedigree and the identity of the Memphis Grizzlies for a long time now, even in this newer era. Of course, back with Marc Gasol, back with Zach Randolph, the Memphis Grizzlies' identity was to grind it out, be hard on the boards, grind it out down in the paint, get buckets down low, be very tough on the defensive end. You're talking about Taurean Prince, Tony Allen, Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, and Zach Randolph. It was an extremely physical, extremely hardworking group that was extremely good on the defensive end. And as much as they didn't have as significant or as good of pieces to make that grinded out, defensive, hardworking team, since Marc Gasol, since Mike Conley, since Zach Randolph have moved on, that identity has remained. This has been a team that has played well on the defensive end, has been a very hardworking team. You always knew we're always going to get a high level of compete and a decent level of defense from this team. That's just always been something that's been associated with Memphis. Last year, they were a 7th ranked team in terms of defensive rating. But this year, that has completely changed. Now, I will note, before I just start this discussion in more depth, that even though Memphis have had a much more of an offensive identity this year and much less of a defensive one, Dillon Brooks has been out for the majority of the season. He has only played in 4 games, starting 3. But at the end of the day, one player cannot change an identity. He will make the Memphis Grizzlies a better team, but he will not make them go from one of the worst in the league to one of the top 10. He will help with their identity and he will help with their performance, but the identity as a whole has shifted with this year's group. The offense, absolutely electric. Arguably the best Memphis Grizzlies offense in the last 4 or 5 years. They've been brilliant. They currently sit at 10th in the league, tied for 9th in offensive rating, led by dark horse MVP candidate, but certainly going to be a lock for an all-star game in Morant, averaging over 25 points per game. He has been absolutely brilliant so far this year, shot out of the gate playing extremely well, and has continued ever since. Also helped very much so by the new, arguably, second co-star, or the second man to Morant for the future in Desmond Bane, as he has been playing better on the offensive end than Jaren Jackson Jr. this year, and he has been extremely good, off to an extremely hot start. Did slow down for a little bit, but has now picked it up again over the last couple of games. Just continues to improve, continues to work hard, good from deep, good from mid-range, starting to attack the rim a little bit more as well. You're just getting a little bit of everything from Desmond Bane, and he looks to be a very good piece for them moving forward. Jaren Jackson Jr., as much as he hasn't been as good as you would like, has still been a solid piece on the offensive end. I throw that in with Anthony Melton, who can give you some good spacing. Kyle Anderson as well, who's been very valuable as he has been moved to the bench now this year, only starting 2 games. Tyus Jones has been very good from deep as well on the year, shooting 53% from deep. This team is led by some very good offensive players. This is even without Dillon Brooks, who has averaged over 19 points per game in his game so far, whether he's creating his own shot from deep, catch and shoot from deep, a brilliant mid-range shot, and the ability to attack the rim a bit as well. This team is a very, very good offensive team. Defensively, not so much. The defense of the Memphis Grizzlies has taken a turn. As mentioned, that has been the identity of the Memphis Grizzlies for a long time now. With Marc Gasol and the Zach Randolph and Mike Conley era, even up until now last year, much different personnel and coaching, but nonetheless, that identity remained. But this year, they are currently sitting last in the league in defensive rating, and it's not even close. The Memphis Grizzlies currently have a defensive rating of 114.1. The Orlando Magic sit in 29th at 111.8, a whole 2.3 points ahead of the Memphis Grizzlies, which is a sizable gap considering that same point gap of 2.3 Between Orlando and them moving forward is Charlotte at 109.5, and they are the 22nd best defense in the NBA. Memphis have really struggled on the defensive end. JV gone, Steven Adams in, and Steven Adams is a fine defender, but nonetheless, that is a change for your defensive systems to adjust to. Kyle Anderson to the bench, Desmond Bane to the starting lineup, and more lineups towards the end of the games now where Jaren Jackson Jr. is out at the 5 as opposed to Steven Adams, which does give you less length but more mobility on the perimeter. But the biggest thing for this group is the ability to contain the dribble on the perimeter. It was very much even noticeable in their game last night against Utah. There was a lot of penetration from the perimeter. There was a lot of plays where Mike Conley just ran off a pick and roll, was not touched at all, and just had an easy layup or an easy floater. And that just causes problems because A, guys like Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, other guards they're going to play in the Western Conference that are pretty darn good. Dame, CJ, Steph come to mind amongst many others. Those guys are going to get easy looks in mid-range and at the rim. But also, it means that you're going to allow a lot of buckets at the rim. Hassan Whiteside and Rudy Gobert were allowed way too many open looks and easy offensive rebounds last night. And that's just been something that is a problem for the Memphis Grizzlies because they don't have elite perimeter defenders. Now, of course, as mentioned, when Dillon Brooks is back, it will help and they will be a better defensive team. But they are so far and away the worst defensive team in the league right now that it's tough. I don't think their personnel is worse than the league. I think their personnel will improve. I think part of it is getting used to some of the new pieces in the team, with Steven Adams being in, with Zaire Williams playing a significant role as a rookie and getting him adjusted to the system and to the NBA game, getting Desmond Bane in the starting lineup being adjusted to life as a starter and having him be integrated with those guys on the defensive end. I don't think that this is the worst defensive team in the league, but statistically right now they are, and they need to make some improvements moving forward. There is no doubt about it. Securing and limiting the perimeter penetration is going to be key for this group. John Morant, Desmond Bane are going to have to compete on the defensive end, and Dillon Brooks is going to eliminate a lot of that work for them when he comes back because he's going to be able to lock down the star or one of the stars on the perimeter for any given team. But they're going to need someone else to really lock down on a star on some nights as well, especially come playoff time where you're going to be playing teams that have multiple guys on the perimeter that can score at a good level. Dame and CJ, Luka and even Jalen Brunson for the Mavericks when they're out on the court together. Paul George and Reggie Jackson to a lesser extent for the Clippers. Chris Paul and Devin Booker, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. There's going to be a lot of teams you're going to run into and Memphis are going to want to compete against if they want to push in the playoffs and just get themselves even into the playoffs. But they're going to have to improve on the defensive end. And so there is no doubt about it. This Memphis Grizzlies team is electric on the offensive end. They are very fun to watch, very exciting to watch, and one of the better offensive teams in the league and have a bright future moving forward. They need to try and either fully commit to an offensive identity while still getting themselves closer to a middle of the pack defensive rating, similar to something that Denver have done in the past, have really flipped the switch on this year, or they need to try and refine their defensive identity, whether that means the offense slips a little bit. John Morant can extend as much energy on the offensive end, who knows? But the Memphis Grizzlies need to make sure they can refine that identity of being a hard-nosed, hard-working defensive unit. And they don't have to be a top 5 defense in the league, but they at least need to be middle of the pack so their defense doesn't let them down even when their offense scores 115 points. Because unfortunately, based on how their defense has been played so far this year, that's going to be part of it sometimes. And the Memphis Grizzlies offense is not good enough to just simply outscore teams every night. Very few offenses can, and I personally don't think any exist right now in the NBA. That being said, that is my thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies so far this season. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.